The professional world highly regards specific traits. We categorize relentless drive, hyper-independence, and a stoic, commanding presence as the inherent virtues of successful people. Pathwork provides a different lens through which to view this profile, identifying this rigid stance as the power mask or the aggressive type. This outward projection of total invulnerability serves a specific purpose. It functions as a psychological shield, built to suppress a profound underlying terror of being helpless. Over decades, the individual identifies so completely with this armor that they lose the ability to distinguish the defense from their true self. Understanding how to dismantle this psychological prison requires us to reverse engineer its architecture, tracing it from its childhood inception to its eventual dissolution. We can examine this life cycle through the case of Alex, a highly competent financial director whose career and personal life serve as a blueprint for this systemic breakdown. Mistaking a trauma-based defense for genuine leadership carries a high cost, trapping capable individuals in an exhausting cycle of isolation and internal fear. The power mask is forged in a childhood environment where vulnerability is treated as a liability and emotional stoicism is a requirement for survival. Alex grew up in a household where his parents mocked tears and a sibling utilized physical and emotional bullying. In this setting, his natural state was one of constant humiliation and powerlessness. A shift occurred when Alex reached a breaking point. After public teasing, he suppressed his tears and projected an aggressive, dominant stance. This defensive maneuver worked. His sibling retreated, and his parents offered a rare nod of approval for his strength. This success codified what Pathwork calls the unconscious contract. Alex's mind adopted a rigid logic. If weakness leads to danger, then total control ensures safety. He believed that by remaining the strongest person in any room, he would never be hurt. The resulting adult personality rests on this calcified survival tactic. The appearance of innate dominance is the persistence of a child's logic in an adult world. 30 years later, Alex is a successful financial director who views every boardroom meeting and every domestic disagreement as a battle that must be won. He operates through extreme hyper-independence. To Alex, asking for help is not a logistical choice, it is a fatal admission of vulnerability. Beneath this competent exterior, a mechanism called the covert demand dictates his interactions with the world. This demand is a silent ultimatum. The world must obey and acknowledge his superiority. For Alex, his internal sense of safety is entirely dependent on others remaining compliant. Maintaining this level of control requires constant hypervigilance, draining the psychological energy needed for genuine engagement. This creates an unstable equilibrium. The entire system remains vulnerable to any reality that refuses to conform to his demands. Eventually, the illusion of control meets the reality of human error and external circumstances. When a subordinate makes a mistake that reflects poorly on the department, Alex's carefully constructed image of perfection is threatened. This threat triggers the eruption of what Pathwork calls the lower self. The error bypasses the armor, touching the suppressed childhood terror of being inadequate. To stop the feeling of being small, the lower self takes over. Alex projects punishing hostility, using intellectual arrogance and cutting anger to silence the subordinate and reestablish his dominance. The consequences are immediate and damaging. Colleagues begin to operate out of fear, and a deep emotional wall grows between Alex and his family. The structural irony is complete. In his attempt to fully protect himself from the pain of his childhood, the power mask recreates the very isolation and unsafety he originally sought to escape. Dissolving this armor before it ruins his professional and personal life requires a systematic approach to self-awareness. The process begins with observation. Alex must learn to recognize the physical signs of the mask activating, the tightening in his chest, or the sudden urge to use logic as a weapon. Next comes a shift in accountability. He has to move from blaming others to claiming ownership of his own hostility and his compulsive need to dominate. This honesty allows him to look beneath the anger to find the foundational terror that drives it. He uncovers the hidden belief at the center of his identity, that being wrong makes him weak, and being weak makes him unlovable. Dismantling the belief requires the practical execution of interpersonal vulnerability. At work, this looks like a director admitting a miscalculation to their team and asking for their collaborative help to resolve it. At home, it involves telling a spouse about feelings of inadequacy and stress instead of hiding behind defensive anger. Alex discovers that instead of the humiliation he feared, his vulnerability is met with support and warmth. By repeatedly testing these risks and finding support rather than attack, Alex begins to invalidate his childhood contract. The mind starts to retire the armor as it realizes that safety no longer requires total dominance. This integration leads to the post-mask state, where the authentic self is no longer buried under a rigid defense. Alex moves toward a model of true strength. He leads through inspiration and collaboration rather than the fragile authority of fear. He develops emotional fluidity, allowing himself to experience fear and sadness without seeing those emotions as an inherent failure of character. The shift from hyper-independence to healthy interdependence allows him to see reliance on others as a human necessity. As the constant internal war against his own vulnerability ends, it is replaced by a grounded sense of serenity. This internal change allows for genuine, intimate connections with his colleagues and his family. Power is not found in the absence of vulnerability, but in the courage to face and integrate it.